Well, hi everyone, I am back. As some of you may know, I've been in Iceland with Thomas Heaton, Adam Gibbs, and Thor Photography, who acted as our guide. It was just the four of us. We were on a camping trip in the southern and central Highlands, and we had a fabulous time. Now, I appreciate that a lot of countries are still kind of restricted in movement and so forth. Adam, of course, was flying in from Canada. Thomas and myself were coming in from the UK. Iceland was open to us, and we had to do a COVID-19 test on arrival, and then we had to wait between 5 and 7 hours on that first day for our tests to come back, which were of course all negative, and only then would Thor pick us up, and we more or less drove off into the Highlands for the entire time we were there, and were more or less self-isolating from everybody else. So we had virtually no contact with anyone while we were there. And of course, since we came back last weekend, myself, we're just tucked away in our little corner of the west of Scotland again, and we're not really going out at all. And of course, we're still using masks in shops and so forth. Now, the trip. We had an incredible time. I've been to Iceland a lot, maybe 20 to 30 times over the years, but most of those times were running workshops. I think this is only the second or third time I've really gone and just explored the place on my own or with a few friends. We were going to areas that I hadn't been to before, and it's so easy when you do this to go with expectation and pre-visualization and all of that. But I wouldn't be Alister Benn without ignoring most of those things, so I can absolutely guarantee that I had no expectation of what I was going to try and do or the type of images I was going to make. So going into these landscapes for the first time on your, fresh, you don't know what the weather's going to do, you don't know what the light's going to do, you've got no idea what the place is going to look like. It's a completely blank canvas. And I'll admit that I was a little bit rusty.
You have to hold it up. Is it on auto exposure?
I don't know.
Do you know how to use that thing?
How's the bad loading going, Alister?
I think I'm getting the hang of it now. How'd you do it?
Quick roll it up before the light gets to it.
Wait, it's cloudy, it's alright. This is it. I've fucking got it, man.
Yeah, oh yeah, all right.
But it was such a joyful trip. Tom, Adam, myself and Thor, we just had such a laugh. We were just four friends out in the landscape, no expectations, no judgment, each of us just shooting our own way, no competition. It was just such a relaxed atmosphere. And of course, Tom's channel, Adam's channel, and my own, and Thor's channel, we're all going to be producing videos of the trip, and you'll see just how different the type of images that we're going to be making. So please check out the other guys' work as well. Now, if I'm a bit rusty, I'm going to fall back into my kind of safe zone in terms of how I go about making photographs. And that approach can be summarized in my ebook, Luminosity and Contrast, and in my black and white processing videos, where I look at the world through the eyes of a child. Yeah. When we go to these areas, and what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the geothermal area. This is where we went first. So Iceland is a young country, geologically speaking. It's, very, very fresh. The world is, the island's still tearing itself apart and growing through volcanic activity and tectonic activity. There were hundreds of earthquakes, little small earthquakes, while we were on the island. And it looks like a volcanic eruption might actually be going to happen fairly soon as well, with maybe Hekla blowing. It's somewhat expected. So when you go into these geothermal areas, the world is just full of steam and the smell of sulfur. And it's a very inspiring place to be. And the way I see the world, like I said, is through the eyes of a child. I just feel fascinated with this stuff. I want to understand why the earth is boiling and why the color of the rocks is that color, and the smell of sulfur, and the color palette. So the type of images I make are distillations of landscapes. This has always been my approach, or certainly for the last 4 or 5 years, is to look at bits of the landscape that just break it down into its fundamentals for me. And the 5 words, as always, are going to be color, geometry, luminosity, contrast, and atmosphere. They're the 5. It is always a combination of those 5 things that will make me point my camera at something. So if I look at this first example, the foreground, the color of the rocks in its own right, those slopes are just vibrant, rich in color. The sun was coming in and hiding. This is like 11 o'clock in the morning, so it's not golden hour by any means. It's midday in terms of Icelandic time in the summer. The way the steam was filtering up this valley here and playing hide and seek with the snow slopes, we end up with these transitions. So what have we got here? If I distill this composition, we've got this strong diagonal triangle in the foreground there. It's richly textured. There's lots of contrast. There's lots of luminosity. There's clarity to it. It's tactile. It feels closer. Even though using the long lens here, I'm compressing the landscape into very flat surfaces. Through processing, we can separate those and create something with depth, even though it's compressed. So that foreground slope is a feast for the eyes, and it diffuses into the background where the steam is obscuring those snow slopes. We've got conjoining geometry here. We've got angles that are coming together in points. So it's very triangular, it's very pointy. And if we think about other things that are triangular and pointy, like the pyramids of Giza, they're dynamic shapes. They're very powerful shapes that we immediately identify with. And there's something almost spiritual about triangles. So this image in its own right is full of triangles. And once we superimpose textures, colors, contrast, luminosity, and detail into these surfaces, then it all gets kind of stimulating. Now, as soon as we bring mist into this, it starts diffusing these elements. And as soon as you bring atmosphere into an image, you're creating depth, you're creating mystery, you're creating suspense, you're hiding details behind the mist. And if I quickly pull up a couple of these photographs that were taken, where are we? If I use this one, I can't find what I want to do. Even if I just pull in the one that was immediately after that one. Now, the one on the right hasn't been processed, and there's been a slight shift in the composition, very, very slightly. But the one on the right, there's less mist coming up the valley, and therefore we can see more of what's behind. And therefore there's kind of, it's a little bit more explicit than the one on the left. And this is the joy of landscape photography, is that when you've got mist or fog or cloud blowing around, or waves on a beach, or sea spray, or rain, or any of these atmospheric elements, the change in them changes the landscape every fraction of a second. And when you hit the trigger, when you push the button, you're saying, now it's mysterious enough. Because as soon as the mist clears, then you can see more of the landscape, and it might not be speaking to you in the same way as it did before. So each of the photographs that I made at this time, here's one of Tom, contemplating the world on his own, which is a nice thing for him to do. Each of these photographs is really just a little isolated snapshot of the 5 elements: color, geometry, luminosity, contrast, and atmosphere. The choice of when to push the button was when I felt that the steam was in an area that spoke to me. Now, I only shot about 320 digital frames in a 10-day trip, so that's about 30 a day, which is quite a small number for digital anyway. And I think I've also shot maybe 3 or 4 rolls of film, so maybe another 30 to 40 slide or transparency film frames. You can tell I'm out of practice with all this talking to camera thing. So in total, less than 350 compositions in the entire trip. So quite a low number. But the experience of being there, the experience of looking at this landscape in development, I found totally fascinating. The experience of just witnessing it was very powerful. And I'd like to think that the few frames I make, they were the ones that basically said, right, yeah, now is a moment for you to record. So the actual images that I'm making, I'm going to pool them together into a portfolio of images that I'll be putting on my website, alisterbenn.com. And I'm hoping to get between 9 and 15 photographs that are going to form a kind of a development evolution of the trip, so from the beginning through to the end. And the metaphor that's very strong in my mind here is that this is a landscape that changes. It's being born. It's being things eventually grow on it, but also it's being battered by the elements. You know, the rain, the wind, the snow, the frost, the freezing temperatures in the winter. Glaciers are shaping it and carving it. The elements are just totally changing it, and of course it's evolving and growing as the volcanism continues as well. So I want this series of images to represent the birth, growth, and decay of a landscape. The color palettes are going to go from warm to vibrant green and down into coolness again. So hopefully this over the next month or 5 weeks or so, we're going to have a weekly Sunday video again. I know that I said I was going to cut back on my production, but there'll be at least one Sunday video, or there'll be a Sunday video every week. And then these videos are going to be a progression of my creative development with the images that I took on this trip, moving from the geothermal area up into the highlands and then to some of the other areas that we had. We had some amazing light. We had lots of overcast light. So again, it just demonstrates that you work with what you've got. You work with the conditions. So that will be a theme in future videos as well. On Wednesday of this coming week, I will have the pure joy and pleasure of introducing you to Mr. Bruce Percy, another Scottish landscape photographer, a fine art landscape photographer who makes the most beautiful prints, one of which we've just bought. Bruce and I share a great similarity in our approach to simplifying the landscape, and I can't wait to have this conversation. When this video is going live, we will just be having our conversation. So Sunday this week, I'll be speaking with Bruce, publishing it on Wednesday, which we can definitely stick in the diary. I'll be back next Sunday, and then in 2 weeks' time, the Vision and Light episode is going to be the 20th Vision and Light, and on it there's going to be Mr. Adam Gibbs, Mr. Thomas Heaton, and myself sat in a hotel lobby talking about this trip. So it'll be really interesting, you know, in 5 or 6 or 3 weeks' time or whatever, to be sitting down and listening to what Tom and Adam and myself think about what we tried to achieve while we're in Iceland. Hopefully it's nice to have me back, and if so, please give me a subscription and a thumbs up. That's always appreciated. And please dig into the ebooks and videos that I make, because that is what is keeping me alive at this moment. And finally, if you are a member of the channel, In other words, if you're one of the monthly subscribers, I have processed this image, so the raw file is on the left and the worked image is on the right hand side. I processed this image and I recorded it with a screen recording, and that is going to be going up for the members who have joined the channel below. So if you don't see the join button, you need to go to a web browser because it doesn't show on a mobile or tablet. And the processing video for the image that I'm showing on the screen right now is going to be posted this coming week for the members who are paying the higher amount, so the Expressive photographers on there. So there's a new processing video going to be posted this week for the subscribers who are helping to support the channel financially, which again is keeping us alive. So thank you very much, as always, for supporting us, because without you, we would be in some serious bother. Thank you very much for watching. As always, remember the old thumbs up, and that is much appreciated. Any comments, stick them below, and now I'm back. I'm going to be answering those as I used to before I went away. I took a bit of a break from social media, and that's about it. I hope you found this first little video of our trip to Iceland interesting and inspiring, and hopefully we'll all be able to get out into the field soon enough and start making photographs again. For the rest of the year, we're going to be vlogging from our home in the west of Scotland, so you can expect to see lots of autumn colour coming in a month or so's time. I'll stop rambling now. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.